You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionFit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it begins. Yes, it is time to commence our broadcast week here on the Options Insider Radio Network. Got another banger in store for you this week. A plethora of shows at the ready for you folks. On demand, live, however you prefer to consume them. If you want to go above and beyond, get the live as well as all of the cool exclusive programs. Got a great pro Q&A coming up tomorrow. Old pal, Mr. JJ Kinnahan. I haven't talked to him in forever. He's coming on tomorrow on the Pro Q&A to answer all your questions out there. We had Tony Sliba last week. It's just been on fire. Scott Nations not too long ago. Jack Schwager, bunch of great names piling in to the hot seat just to answer your questions. How nice are we here on the show, bringing all these people here to chat with you? Of course, you can check all that out for yourself. Check out the ones you missed as well as participate in all the future ones, theoptioninsider.com/pro. We get in there now because about a week or so left until we have to choose the October winner for the Pro Trading Crate. So get in there before the end of the month so you can get entered for that drawing for these cool bespoke crates that we send out. They're kind of a pain. My staff hates me for doing this, but it is kind of fun nonetheless to pick through our vault of goodies and see, what are they going to win, including in addition to some cool Options Insider gear and some educational material. You're always going to get that, but also some other fun stuff sprinkled in there as well. So get in there. Register now while the getting is good before the end of the month for the October crate. And of course, however you listen live after the fact, hit us up. Questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We do love hearing from all of you folks. But it is that time of the week, listeners. It is our first show of the week. So you know what we have to do now. It is time to play our favorite game, pretty much our only game of the week. I guess you can call, if you count Crystal Ball as a game, then maybe we have two. But this is, so I guess it kind of makes sense. We begin and end the week with a game. But now we shall commence with our favorite game, quite frankly. It is, can you name that 80s wrestler via their entrance music? Here we go.
Wrestling Federation. For 50 years, the revolutionary force in sports entertainment.
All right. I think you get the picture. We're going a little bit deeper cut here. So we're going beyond the Hogans and the Machos and the Andres and the Warriors, going, let's say, a secondary, perhaps even a third tier below them. I won't give any more hints. This is a little bit of a deeper cut, but I think the music, while it may not be recognizable, may be indicative of the kind of gimmick we're working with here. So let's go around the horn. Let's go out. Let's give him a chance to catch up. Let's go out first to the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. By way of deep in the heart of Texas, where wrestling is still very much alive and still very much real. That's real stuff down there in the heart of Texas. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the program. A and B, can you guess our 80s wrestler, sir?
Man, that was a hard one. I don't know. So I'm going to have to take a guess here on who it could be. You know, it's not the Honky Tonk Man. And it's not, you know, but it's somebody with like some pizzazz and some flair, right? So not Ric Flair.
Not Ric Flair, but you're on the right track. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Somebody with some real pizzazz. So, you know, it got me thinking it's somewhere on the tier of like a Coco Beware on that tier. But who would be flashy like that? And, you know, I'm wondering whether that could be Ravishing Rick Rude.
Wow. Hit it out of the park. First swing at the, because it's kind of like a male kind of burlesque kind of strippery song, right? That's exactly.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like he pulls the girl out of the audience, kisses her, the whole 9 yards. So,
at first I was like, this is going to be a hard one. Then I listened to the music. I was like, you know what? I think you could maybe get what they're putting down with that music there. All right. Yeah. All right. Well done. Bonus points for you. Nice. Getting a Ravishing Rick Rude. Look at that. I am certifiably impressed, sir. Well done. All right. Now, you know, I'm not sure if he's going to get it. Let's see. He's pretty honest with us usually, unless he's doing his tag team skullduggery. But we won't drag up that open wound again. Let's go out to St. Charles. We are joined by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW. Mr. Uncle Mike, A, welcome back to the program. And B, what were you thinking for that theme? Or did you hit on right away that it was Rick Rude?
Great to be here. It took me a second or two, but I would have gotten it. I was about probably 90% sure it was Rick Rude. He was, you're right, he wasn't a top tier kind of guy, but he was part of the Heenan family, and definitely have memories of ravishing Rick Rude with pulling the women out of the audience, and he'd make out with them and then they'd faint.
Yeah, they had a lot of that gimmick going on. They had Rick Rude. They had I'm blanking on the name. The model Rick Martel. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, the model Rick Martel was the other one. They had a couple of guys rocking this. So I could have been I would have forgiven you if you guessed that one as well. They were both kind of similar gimmicks as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, listeners, welcome to the Trading Block. Let's see if the markets are ravishing today. And I guess it kind of depends what your definition of that is from a market perspective. It could certainly perhaps be, especially look at the NASDAQ now, up nearly a full percent, about 0.9%. In some circles, that could be considered ravishing out there. The S&P up over 0.5%, and the Dow up about 0.25%. So clearly, we're feeling the green, you know, all the worries about tapering and growing inflation and all these logistical issues, they're all by the wayside. It seems like people are firmly looking at earnings right now, and some other good news out there. Tesla's kind of lifting all boats. It was up coming to Showtime over 7, about 7.5%. Hertz coming out agreeing to buy 100,000 Teslas for their rental fleet, so that'll give them a lift. Also, Tesla announcing they're raising their prices on some of their cars, and yet it doesn't seem to be hurting the stock there either. So kind of a 1-2 upside punch for them. Of course, earnings season in full swing. We'll get into some of that in a little bit. We've already seen some big names popping off, but a lot more coming. If you want more earnings analysis, I know we just had Matt on the VolViews program to kind of do our earnings season kickoff. If you want more of a kind of midweek analysis, he'll be joining us tomorrow on the advisor's option as well for his regular monthly check-in there. So we'll get more updated earnings analysis from the Oracle of New Hampshire there. Coming into today's show, we had VIX at the kickoff of the show, a little bit north of the 15 handle, about 15.25 or so. Puts it down roughly 0.25 point from where it was this time last show, so not a huge move there. VVIX at about a little bit shy of 102, about 101.75 coming into Showtime, down a little over 0.5 from Thursday's show. VXX down about half a point to about 21 1/4. UVXY coming into showtime down about 3/4 of a point, down a little bit north of 16, about 16.15 or so. And VolQ still hanging at that the 15 handle, down about 3/4 of a point out there. So a lot to unpack. He won. He got Ravishing Rick Rude, so you have to let him go first. Mr. Meatball A, do you have any enduring memories of the tertiary superstar that was Ravishing Rick Rude? Did you prefer the model Rick Martel? Which of these gimmicks did you prefer? And then B, what else is lighting up your tape today, sir?
Rick Rude was a much better gimmick, but there are some funny things about the model Rick Martel. I remember he had a feud with Jake the Snake Roberts, and he had his male cologne called Arrogance, and he accidentally purposely sprayed Jake Roberts in the eyes and blinded him. And that was the premises behind, I believe they had a blindfold match. They had all kinds of other stuff. And that was really exciting. Rude had a good feud with one of the Ultimate Warrior's only decent feuds was with Rick Rude, who at some point won the Intercontinental title. I really liked Rick Rude. I think that he did not reach his full potential at the WWF. I know he went over to WCW and did real well there. So yeah, Rick Rude, R.I.P. And he was quite the wrestler.
Look at you giving us the encyclopedic chapter and verse of Ravishing Rick Rude. So do you have the Wikipedia open in front of you right now?
No, I just remember all this stuff. This is like my heyday. Watching these guys on Saturday morning. You
got to say, if there was a crazy feud, a crazy gimmick involved, Jake the Snake is probably in there somewhere. He had a lot of crazy ones.
Yeah, he did. I loved when the Snake bit Randy Savage in the arm.
Yeah, that's legendary. That's the stuff of legend right there.
Mm-hmm. So you probably want to talk markets. They're up. We got the NASDAQ up 1. The Russell is leading. It's up over 1%. The S&P looks really strong. It might be heading to 4,600 by the end of the week. On a Monday, the VIX is off, which, as you guys know, there's this concept of weekend effect. So for the VIX to be off 0.3%, that means that volatility is really off, which is why you're seeing, UVXY and VXX get smoked so bad. I know we'll get to Pinterest and what's happening with that one. We got Facebook earnings tonight, which should be a lot of fun. And, keep an eye on those energy names. They continue to look really strong. And they lead. Nat Gas is blowing higher today. Last I checked, natural gas was up 8% today. So there's definitely some energy issues floating around. And, one thing that was pointed out to me today is WTI crude has been really strong. It's about $85 a barrel. But what's interesting is the spread between Brent and WTI, which is normally, $5, $7, $10, where Brent's more expensive, has now gotten to the point where it's under $2, the spread between WTI and Brent. And there's some structural things going on in Cushing that I think are eyebrow raising as those oil inventories there shrink. Keep an eye on WTI. There's an off chance it could pop over Brent.
Yeah, that's been fascinating to watch the energy markets. Obviously, we get into this on TWTR every week on Thursday, listeners. But, nat gas traditionally was a very siloed U.S.-driven market, and it was insulated from what was going on overseas because it was all shipped and piped around here, the U.S. And then, of course, we started exporting a lot of the LNG, and that made all of a sudden our nat gas market starting to get caught up in some of the movements going on overseas there with their crazy nat gas market. Now we're seeing perhaps some of that spill over into WTI with Brent. There's other issues going on with WTI as well. But yeah, U.S. energy has been fascinating, and certainly nat gas at least has been one of our very frequent offenders on the movers and shakers over there on TWTR. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably going to be on that list again this week, listeners. But the week is young. We shall see on Thursday as we keep on rolling out to the land of St. Charles. Mr. Uncle Mike, do you have any ravishing memories of your own? And then B, what's lighting up your tape out there? And a decidedly Uncle Mike kind of day.
Well, first off, never before in the history of the entire stock market has there ever been a better time to sell than today. So I had to say that. to lead off. But in terms of Ravishing Rick Rude, the one memory I have, I remember he was on the Regis and Kathy Lee show one time, and him and Bobby Heenan were on there, and he was trying to get Kathy Lee to make out with him, and she wasn't having any of it, but it was still kind of funny to watch him chasing her around the set. I remember.
I'm wondering if she knew what was going on with Frank Gifford at the time, whether her opinion was
valid point.
Good times. 80s gossip references. I love it.
Yes, for sure. So I do remember that. I remember, I believe he used to put like his opponent's wife's picture on his tights when he would wrestle them. So I remember that thing that he did. So that's a pretty bold man to do something like that. So, definitely quite the entertainer in the Ravishing one, Rick Rude. May he rest in peace. But in the markets today, so it looks like we've definitely broken out. We're at new all-time highs. You can't break out much more than that in terms of a breakout. So we do have that going on in the S&P today. I think that this week it's apparently people want to be buying before all these earnings announcements with which we have this week. So it's going to be interesting to watch and see how the market reacts to them, as we have we have tech coming out this week with some earnings. So we'll see where that goes. And then just with everything that we have going on in the marketplace, the one thing that we also have is this thing called inflation. And it seems like no one seems to care anymore. With the fact that we do have energy prices rising, we do actually have it to where if you pretty soon it feels like we're going to be paying $15 for a Big Mac. Not that I would buy such a thing when I'm a Portillo's man myself. For both burgers and beefs.
Did you get in on the IPO? Did you buy some Portillo stock, sir?
Not yet, but I'm really thinking about it.
I guess who bought some for $29?
Did you? You got in? Where is it today?
Yeah.
I'll have to go see.
Oh, yeah.
It's like one Portillo's meal or a share of stock. Holy crap. 44.7. Wow. Nice.
This thing it is trading a lot. It's averaging about 13 million shares a day. So this is not like some IPO that everyone's ignoring. Keep an eye on Portillo's. I can't wait for that one to have options listed, frankly.
Definitely. Yeah, this one needs options and stats. OCC, if you're listening, get them going.
Yes. No, I mean, I think that I'm not going to comment on the individual stock itself, but in terms of the food at Portillo's, I've probably bought about thousands and thousands of shares of Portillo's worth of food throughout my lifetime. But with that, I think that we're going to have some pretty fun movement this week. I'm going to be positioning myself to be fairly bullish going into these earnings announcements. I am fairly bullish right now. I'm actually just on a long call spread. I'm just hoping to get filled any minute now for profit. And I'm likely going to be rolling that up, or I'll likely be getting into another long call spread on the S&P in some way, shape, or form later in the afternoon today. And so I actually think that we are looking to the side of bullishness at this point in time, as if all this inflation is not bringing us down, and we've had somewhat of a pullback, then it just seems that in this market, just the craziness of it, that whenever there's any type of pullback, which we've had over the course of the last month, that we rally. And we're in that process right now. So we do have that over the longer term. And when I say longer term, I'm meaning 6 months to a year. Of course, the concern is that we do have higher energy prices at this point in time. And when that's the case, it is hard for the rest of the economy to do well. But perhaps that's just some type of inflation, and the rest of the economy doesn't care about it because everything's going up. And who cares if we have gas approaching the $4 a gallon mark in the Chicago area right now? So that might be the case as well. It'll be interesting to see. But in the meantime, for all of my fellow bulls out there, let's enjoy the day. We have new all-time highs.
It is an interesting one out there. I'm just looking at some of these names that are lighting it up right now. Crazy things afoot. We'll get to all those movers and shakers in a second on our most active list. By the way, I pulled it up. Rick Rude, I knew he had passed away. I didn't realize it was in 1999. He died a while ago. Wow, he died at 40. So he had a rough run there, like many of these wrestlers did, but an interesting one. Nonetheless, 1999. Wow, that's quite a while ago. But let's keep on rolling here. Let's see what is lighting up the tape out there today on this Uncle Mike of days where he gets to say his catchphrase out there. Let's see if the markets are following suit with some suitable paper. And the answer is kind of I guess it really depends where you're looking. Right now, most of the major indices outside of the NASDAQ aren't really putting up a whole bunch of paper. VIX at about 233,000 contracts. The ADV is right around 450 out there right now. So kind of a decent day, about a half of its ADV. Nothing to write home about. SPY at about 2.65 million. The ADV right around 5.4 million out there. The S, 765,000 contracts. The ADV about 1.6 million. The Q's closing in on 1 million contracts right now, 925,000. Q's ADV right around 1.6 million out there, so closing in there. And small caps at about 376,000. The ADV out there about 560, at least out there in IWM land. But let's transition over to single names because there's some action out there today, as you might expect. Cost you 262,000 contracts to break into our top 10 most active list today. So that's a fair amount of paper. That gets you to Palantir. Palantir bumped all the way down to the bottom of our list. You know, it's a pretty active day. Number 9, Mr. Meatball was just talking about them. Pinterest. I guess they're on again, off again, on again, dalliance with PayPal is off again, and the stock taking a bit of a hit as a result. The stock is off about 7 points right now, about 12 and a quarter, trading a little bit shy of the 51 handle right now, but it's good for nearly 300,000 contracts, 294,000 contracts on the tape right now. In Pinterest, number 8, NIO, you know, we've got Tesla news, and we're going to have the other electric car makers moving as well. NIO just a tick under 300K, 299,000 contracts right now. For number 8. Number 7, NVIDIA, you know, they're locked in the top 10 for the foreseeable future. 310,000 contracts right now for NVIDIA. Excuse me. Number 6, actually. We haven't seen this one in the top 10 in a while. Lucid Motors back in there. Number 6, 332,000 contracts. Number 5, AMD. It's like you only got one half of the symbol twins in there today. No AMC to be found, which is interesting. AMD number 5, 370 on the tape for them. Number 4, it's Facebook. This one's had some interesting headwinds up there of late, and Facebook today actually around a little bit, up about a half a buck right now, so feeling some of the broad beta love, it seems like. Good for 418,000 contracts today, though, so something is afoot out there in Facebook. See, how low did it get today? It got down to 319, so it has rallied $6, looks like, from that, or close to it, from that low. Just briefly broke 320 today. Now it's trading a little bit north of 325, so it looks like about around $5.50 or so. So nice little pop for Facebook, it seems like, out there. And then number 3, yes, I said number 3 is Apple. Only 433,000. That's nothing. That's a rounding error for Apple. So it's a really light day for Apple, which is interesting. And it sometimes seems like when we see all this action, these other hot names, it siphons some of the paper away from Apple. People get a little bit bored. Maybe they move away. Either way, Apple, I haven't seen them do this little in quite some time. Still enough for number 3, so it's nothing to sneeze at, but it's very low for Apple. Numero 2 here on our list, a name we've talked about a few times over the course of the beginning of earnings season here. This is Snap, back in our top 10 here. 482,000 contracts on the tape. They're not messing around. Snap's only off 55 cents today, but looks like they had a nice little run. They're trading at 56, and they sold off down to 54 about a half, then back up to about 56, and now they're back down to about 54 and change again. So they've had some volatility intraday out there today, which is undoubtedly was contributing to all of this action out there. Snap, of course, a lot of people thought they were a bit of a canary in the coal mine for how earnings season was going to go for the ad-heavy tech names like your Googles and your Facebooks and others, because they were all blaming Apple for their new privacy policy for hurting their ad revenues. It's one of the reasons why the market was kind of getting a little top-heavy towards the end of last week. Obviously, many reasons involved, more sellers than buyers, but that was one of them. And today, Snap doing 482,000 contracts out there today. Even though Facebook and others are rallying, maybe folks think the Snap thing, maybe it was a bit of them just pointing the finger and not really a bit of a canary in the coal mine like some people thought. And then number 1, you know what it is today, listeners. It is Tesla just lighting things up. Almost 2.25 million contracts for the number 1 spot. This stock has been on a tear. It's up 25, almost 26% just in the last month. 203 handles. My goodness, 85 of that coming today. Wow. So the Hertz news giving a nice shot in the arm to Tesla. Of course, last week they had some decent numbers out there as well. So kind of a nice combo to really lift Tesla out there, threatening the 1,000 level again. 993 right now. Let's see. Did they hit it today? 997 and 66 seems to be about the high. So they got close, but not quite there. But intriguing stuff out there in our most actives. Speaking of intriguing stuff, let's see what's going on out here this week. We got a big week this week. We got a lot of FANG names popping off, except for obviously Netflix. They were already on the tape last week. This week we got Facebook, so the F obviously popping off today. Tomorrow we got Alphabet. We got Microsoft in there as well. We got AMD. Tomorrow we have Twitter and Robinhood tomorrow as well, and GE and Hasbro out back in the Toyland again. Wednesday we got our friends across the street: Boeing, GM, Coke, Mickey D's, Spotify, Six Flags. How's the theme park business going? Ford, you guys love them these days. And eBay. Thursday, another A name you may have heard of called Apple, and yet another one called Amazon right after it on Thursday. Good old S-Bucks on Thursday, as well as Gilead and Friday. We've got Chevron and a few others out there. Earnings move results, and earnings season reports are still coming in from the folks over there at Slang. Let's go look at some of the ones we have on hand for this week already, though. We got a lot of ones, as you might imagine. Otis Elevators will 85.5. They're pricing in 335. In the past, they moved 314, so a little bit of extra elevator juice. Let's go out to Facebook, though. They are today after the bell. They were at almost 341 as of this report. They're pricing in 1765. In the past, they moved 1729. Given all the news that's come out about them of late, maybe you could see an argument for a little bit more juice rather than less, but we shall see. Eli Lilly before the bell on the 26th, 243 3/4 is where they were trading. They were pricing in $9. In the past, they moved 685. So extra juice, the order of the day in Eli Lilly. AMD, a perennial top tenner, 26th after the bell. 116.5 is where they were trading. They were pricing in 6.5. In the past, they moved 863. So less juice in AMD, which is interesting given the fact that they're a perennial top tenner these days. The Alphabet out there, 26 after the bell, 28.35 is where they were trading as of this report. They were pricing in 108.5. In the past, they moved 125.5. So a lot less juice in Alphabet land. Good old Hood. Obviously, we don't have a lot of data for this one, but let's see what we have nonetheless. They were at nearly $42 as of this report. They were pricing in 361, and in their last announcement, they moved 429. So read into that what you will. Not a lot of history there, but intriguing nonetheless. Microsoft, 307.5. They were pricing in 861. In the past, they've moved 754. So extra juice for good old Softy. Intriguing. Twitter, 26 after the bell. 65.80 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 580. In the past, they moved 694. So a lot less juice in Twitter land as well. Boeing, they've had some unfortunate vol for a lot of reasons over the last year and a half. 216.20 is where they were trading. They're pricing in about $8. In the past, they've moved a little bit under $7. So extra juice in Boeing. Again, given some of their headlines, perhaps not the worst move. Mickey D's, how's that McRib hitting things out there? October 27th when they're popping off before the bell. They were trading right around 240 as of this report. They're pricing in, get this, listeners, 6.25. In the past, they moved 4.25. That's a lot of extra juice in Mickey D's. Wow. Interesting. More juice on the horizon for Mickey D's. That's surprising. Six Flags, August 27th. Again, October 27th before the bell. $42 is where they were trading. 336 they're pricing in. The past, they've moved 312. So a little bit extra juice in theme park land. Let's get on to the on again, off again, on again meme name you all love these days. Ford, October 27th after the bell. They were trading at $16, I should say, as of this report. They're pricing in $0.75. In the past, they've moved 66 cents. So about a dime worth of extra juice out there. Is that merited? Given what the hell Ford's been doing of late, it's hard to argue that it isn't. We shall find out soon. If you want to check out all these tickers, and as soon as we get the updated reports, they'll be available for you over there at theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab to begin your journey to the earnings dark side. Remember, if you want more of that, we'll be diving even more into that with Mr. Matt on the Advisor's Option tomorrow. Meanwhile, now it's time for us to keep on rolling. It is time to get weird. It's time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody. Let us unleash the eye of Sauron and see what it fixes its gaze upon today. It is time for the Odd Block, our segment of unusual activity and daring do. Let's see what we have in store for today. First, Mr. Meatball, prepare yourself, for we are returning to the land of Brazil. This area, this region, has been a frequent offender for unusual activity for the last few months. We had iTub, we have good old PBR, which is our offender on the tape today, as well as many other Brazilian and indeed South American, and has spilled over into Argentina and other areas as well. A lot of South American unusual activity on the tape. And this time we're going back to good old PBR. No, unfortunately, not the old Pabst Blue Ribbon that is available at many of the finer stadiums here in Chicago. No, we're going out to Petrobras, ticker symbol, of course. PBR out there, obviously a Brazilian ADR. Trading right now almost $10.5, about $10.44. It's had a nice run over the past year. Today, it's up about 50 cents, about 5%. So a nice pop today as well. Petrobras a year ago was trading about $7.20. It sold off almost immediately down to its pretty much 52-week low for the year, $6.15. And that was it for them. They kind of rallied hard up to, looks like about 1170 actually on January 7th. So right after all the craziness here in the U.S. kicked off. They hovered there for a while, then they actually sold off a little bit, got back down to 721. So, but then they kind of bounced almost immediately again. And by, let's see, June again, they were trading at their 52-week high of $12.38. And then they kind of sold off down to, looks like about $10, $10.20 or so. And they kind of bounced in that, looks like mostly $10 to $11 range. They got down to 9 something briefly, but mostly $10 to $11 for the last couple of months, ever since really June and July there. So kind of been hovering in that range and still right in the middle of it right now, 1044 as we come into today's show. So what does our Eye of Sauron find right now in Petrobras? What do we got here? We got some puts lighting it up to the tune of 10,000 of the Oct 29th, so expiring this week. So pretty near to the fire here. 11 puts. So these are in the money puts going up for 76 cents. The market was decently wide, but not terrible. 69 cents at 85. These went up for 76 cents. So kind of a split in the uprights type trade. Wondering it's about an 89% vol. The stock at the time was pretty much right here, right around 1040. So the stock hasn't moved at all. And interestingly enough, they are getting earnings through this because the earnings are on the 28th. So that's obviously the reason why they picked this weekly. That's what the weeklies were designed for. If you want to spec on or hedge against an event, why bother with a full month's worth of premium if you just want to hedge against that event, which makes me kind of lean. Maybe they did. That'd be a heck of a fill, though, if they bought these for 76 cents, if they're offered at 85. The way that's set up, it does read like, outside of the execution, it does read like otherwise. Maybe you would sell the monthly to get a little bit more juice on all this. But you're getting a fair amount of juice, 76 cents. It is a meaty, in the money type option. I wouldn't say it's meaty. Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts on these kind of mid-market, but definitely meaty puts in Petrobras going out next week? You think they're trying to carve out a little yield, or you think they got a decent fill on these and they're actually looking to hedge this earnings event this week?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they bought those puts with stock, because if you look across on the calls, there's almost 80,000 of those trading today as well. So Petrobras is seeing just a giant influx of calls expiring this week. I don't know the full story, but it is definitely eyebrow raising, the amount of volume that we're seeing in Petrobras in the October 29th, and then some pretty decent volume in November 5th, where they're buying the 11 calls, and even in regular November, where they're buying up to the 11s and even the 12.5. So there is definitely something afoot. Vol is way higher. So I think they were buying them, and they probably did them with stock. Again, that the call trading for this week is also eyebrow raising. Keep an eye on PBR.
PBR, like a lot of these Brazilian names, they seem to trade in fits and starts. And when they bring it, for size out in this name. For whatever reason, there are some size players playing in names like PBR and iTub. And when they want the paper, they bring it. And you're right. I think the stock could account for the weird execution, because listeners, if you put it up tied to stock, then you can play a little bit with it. Okay, I'll put the stock up here, and that gives me a better price on the options and vice versa. So if you just look at the options execution, obviously, you're missing some of the story. And given the fact that it's just a weekly and it's just through the announcement, that makes me kind of think that it probably is a bit of a buy. So we're going to come back to these maybe next week and see how these are doing out here. What do you think our friend is up to? You think he's hedging the earnings event with stock, perhaps without? Do you think he's drawing a very near-term line in the sand? He is getting 76 cents. He's also probably going to end up owning the stock because he's selling the in-the-money put, so he's also got to deal with that. But intriguing stuff nonetheless. Let's get on out now, Mr. Rock Lobster. Excuse me, Mr. Meatball. I apologize. I think you'll like these. These calls we're going to talk about next. I think you'll like these for a couple of reasons. First off, this is Guess. I know you love your ladies' fashion retailers there, so this is already up in your business already. You love this. And then on top of that, it looks like we got some meefy call action. But before I get there, let's break down what's been up in Guess over the past year. Guess, ticker symbol, Guess, GES, listeners. A year ago, we're trading $21 right now. A year ago, they were trading about 13 and a quarter. So they've had a nice run. It's been mostly upside with one little sell-off pretty much. Or maybe, I guess you can, latter half of the year, they kind of petered out a little bit as well. So the first half of the year was looking pretty good. They got up to about $27 in March, and then they sold off down to about, looks like 21 and change, almost a little bit shy of 22. By the way, where they opened last year, that was pretty much right around the 52-week low. They dipped off to $11.50 in the end of October, and they never looked at it again. They got to as low as $21.98 in March, and they rallied again. They got up to their 52-week high in May, on May 27th, right around $31, 31 and change. And then they sold off again down to $20.95 or so. And they've kind of been bouncing in this range, this 20 to 22 range, pretty much ever since. So that sell-off kind of petered out back in July, mid-July. So ever since mid-July, they've been kind of bouncing in this low 20s range here. And that's where we find them today. But Mr. Meatball, seems like someone is coming out to play here today in Guess. Because we got, like I said, the aforementioned MEFI. And, you know, it's a sliding scale for what qualifies for MEFI, but it's got to be in the money usually because that brings the premium. And then it's got to be more than, let's say, a couple of bucks. You got to be talking at least $4, I think, to qualify on MEFI. And these qualify however you're looking. So we saw 7,400 of the Jan 10 calls, listeners. You know where I'm going. The stock's trading $21. So you know where these are trading roughly. They bought these for $11.43, listeners, 7,400 times. Pretty close to the offer on these bad boys. That was a 93.5 vol, if you're wondering. So they paid some premium for these bad. But that's a lot of juice for Guess, where the stock's had some movement, but the last few months it's kind of just been hovering in the low 20s. So paying almost a 100 vol for these. Wow. Stock was a little bit higher at 21.32 when these went up, which would account for a little bit of the more meefy nature of the trade. You're getting earnings in these. The next announcement is on December 1st. So, Mr. Meatball, A, how excited are you to talk about Guess? B, doubly how excited are you to talk about some meefy calls? And then C, what do you think of this trade, sir?
Well, one, they definitely qualify as meefy. I mean, those are really meaty and beefy and in the money. I think it's just a simple stock replacement where they're buying calls instead of buying the stock. Probably stay off the radar. That's 750,000 shares of stock. Somebody probably doesn't want it on their what's the form that they have to do every quarter with the holdings?
13F.
Yeah, somebody probably doesn't want it in the 13F. Notice the timing would be January. That's after the quarter ends. So this would keep it off the 13F and allow them to participate in Guess. So maybe something along those lines.
Regulatory needs aside, I'm curious. One of the other reasons I want to talk about this one, what are your thoughts on doing it? Obviously, you're right. It obviously is a stock substitution here. On doing it on pretty much a $20 stock. And this is the play you usually see on much meatier names, right? What do you think about doing it in the $20 range?
It's definitely interesting. I don't fully know why they're doing this the way they're doing it, but it's not normally a trade I would do. But if you want to get the stock, it's a way to do it. Definitely opening. There's only 60 contracts open interest there. So somebody's definitely up to something on that one.
Someone's got some meefy business afoot out there in Guess. And we're going to keep an eye on this one. We got to come back to our meefier names. Now, a little bit less meefy. Still a little bit beefy. I don't know if they're not quite meefy. We're going back to China, listeners. Another Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer. How many of these things are there? Things are a dime a dozen these days. We're going out to XPeng right now. This is an ADR, trades under the ticker XPEV right now. They have offices in Mountain View, so they're not playing around. They're trying to make some inroads here as well. Let's see here. This ticker a year ago was trading at a little bit shy of $20, 1962. And then looks like they got caught up in the meme frenzy hard because they got up to 74.5. My goodness. From 1902, they're actually the low was 18.5 up to the high of 74.49 in November. Wow. And then they gave it most of it right back. They got sold off again by December 11th. They're trading $44. So still well north of their 19 level. Then they kind of sold off some more, got down to about $38 in late December. And then they sold off again by March 8th. They were trading $26.92. So they had given up most of their upside, certainly from the 74 level, but still above the 19 strike. And they kind of flirted around there again. Then they sold off again back down to, looks like about 23 and change. And then they kind of bounced from there. That was in May. And then they rallied up by June 17th, trading about 45. And they kind of have been hovering in this mid to high 30s to low 40s range ever since. They sold off again back down to about 34 and change in September. And then ever since, it's like mid to late September, they've kind of been on a bit of an upswing, trading up to where they are right now, from the mid 30s up to 47.77, where we find them today, getting obviously a little bit of Tesla cross love here. They're up 462 or nearly 11% today. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found. Man, someone's got an axe to grind on these Nove doubles, listeners, because they are coming for these. We saw first a 3,000 lot of the Nove doubles, AK to 55 calls, listeners, going up for 88 cents, pretty much right off the offer. That's a 71 vol when the stock was actually lower. The stock was 46.16, so these are obviously looking pretty good right now. And that was just one of the many scoops of this. We saw 2,800 going up a few minutes later for a $1.07. Obviously, the stock was running at this time, listeners, and they were chasing it. They saw 27.84 going up for a $1.14 a little bit after that. And then more and more of these. We also saw a total of 14,000 of these had traded by the start of the show, listeners. We also saw, worth noting, 12,000 of the October expiring this week, 29th, 50 calls going up as well. Those were mostly in smaller lots. First, I thought it might have been a roll when I looked at it, but then it looks like that paper was all buying as well, and pretty aggressively, 53 cents, 74 cents. So it could be just a calendar stupid, Mr. Meatball. 12,000 total of the OC 50s and 14,000 total of the Nove doubles have been trading so far. Hey, the name's popping today, so folks are popping out there with the options. What do you think, Mr. Meatball? Do you like these scoops here in XPEV?
Yeah, that's what it looks like it is. They're trading. XPEV's super busy today, a ton of trading, and we're definitely seeing just massive volume. They're scooping these up. Yep, I'm with you.
All right, so here we go. We're trying to empty out our to-be-watched cup, and instead, we add 3 more names to it today. So we're coming back to PBR. We're coming back to the meafiness of guess, easy for me to say, guess. And then coming back to XPEV as well. Some of these sooner rather than later. Some of these are in the weeklies. But now it's time for us to go forward and see what the Lord of Strategery has in place for us. It is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right. It is time, listeners. It is Monday time for the Uncleist of Mikes to dispense some options, wit, and or wisdom. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, you know, this is that time of year. People are looking at how they're going to allocate their portfolio. Maybe do a little bit of speculating at the same time. How do they cross that line of demarcation, sir? What do you have in store for them today?
The line of demarcation. Well, it's kind of a tricky thing to do sometimes, in that when you're doing some speculating and things are going well, you need to have the mental discipline to keep your allocations where you originally planned them to be. And then when it's not going so well, sometimes it's hard to continue to do it, and then you might miss out on something. And so it's kind of hard with that. So a general rule of what I like to do, if I'm to ever do something in the speculative camp. Now, first off, what do I consider doing as something speculative? Now, if it's part of a bigger strategy, so you could say that in and of itself, buying an out-of-the-money put on the SPX is speculative. In and of itself, it is. Let's say you're doing it 1 week out. Well, yeah, of course. But if you're doing it to as a part of a hedge for a greater portfolio because you're concerned with a downturn, then I would not consider it as speculation. And by the same token, my simulated index concept that I talk about, where I marry my aggressive SPX/SPY strategy to something boring, i.e. treasuries or something like that, I don't consider that speculation when it's used together. What I do consider speculation is that if you're doing it in and of itself and you're not trying to marry it with a greater portfolio, then buying an out-of-the-money put on the SPX 1 week out is definitely speculation. And so as I go through this, what I like to look at in terms of overall portfolio allocations is that I like to have no more than 5, maybe 10%, typically 5, closer to 5, and a lot of times less than that, used for speculation. And here's why. Let's say that this strategy that you have is really, really good. I mean, really, really good. Well, if that's the case, if that strategy doubles itself and you start with $1,000, if you double that 10 times, you'll have $1 million. Now, what do I mean by that? 1 gets you 2, 2 gets you 4, 4 gets you 8, and so on down the line. After your 10th double, you're going to be a millionaire from just $1,000. Now, does that mean that if you continue to do that, you should maybe not reallocate and just, I'm going for the million? No, not necessarily. But what it does mean is that whenever you have compound interest and you're having compound interest with large percentages, it can be a very powerful formula. And so because of the fact that compound interest has that much power, I don't feel there is a need to have large amounts of money within speculation. Now, of course, if God were to tell me the S&P 500 is going to do this, that, or the other tomorrow, then I'd put 100% of my money into speculation. But unfortunately, God doesn't tell me what the close is going to be for the S&P the following day. So I believe that the way with which to marry speculation to your portfolio is to have a small amount allocated towards it. And then from there, have your mark of when you're going to reallocate. What I like to do with my clients is every year, around December, January, is I like to reallocate them based on their needs. So let's say, for example, that someone was 5% speculation and the following year, they had a rough go of it with their work. Or later in the year, they had a rough go of it with their work, and perhaps they lost their job, or they got demoted, or they got their hours cut, whatever the case may be. If that's the case, then a lot of times they'll say, okay, well, we need to have a little bit less speculation on, let's reallocate. But now let's say things are going good, and there is no work issues, no money issues, or if anything, they're doing well, clients doing well with their job. Then if that's the case, then the way with which I like to do it is if you make money speculating, and let's say you go from 5 to 7% because you did so well speculating. I'm just once again making up numbers. With that 2% with which we made, I put that back into general investments. So let's say we were 95% a traditional portfolio and then 5% speculation. If because the speculating did so well, it became 7% of the overall portfolio at the end of the year, I would take the gains and put it in the more traditional portfolio and then start over again the following year. Now, with that, you might say, well, Mike, doesn't that take away the power of compound interest? And well, yes and no. But what it also does is it takes away the compound interest power of when the market or when your strategies don't go your way. So what I think it's very important to do is have the right amount of money at risk. And when you have the right amount of money at risk, it makes your life a lot more simple to work with, because if something goes against you, you know you have a smaller amount of money at risk and it's not going to change your life. And that's the strategy block. I believe the final one for October.
But Uncle Mike, you left out how much do I allocate to Shiba Inu coin and Doge? You forgot that part, sir.
For me, it would be, let's see. I've doubled this since the last time I've talked about this allocation. It's at 0, but that's double of what it was before.
Okay, good to see. Good to see you're increasing your allocation as we keep on rolling to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show we tell you what we're keeping an eye on for this week. And we also keep an eye on this week is our question of the week, which just went live right before showtime over there at Options on the old Twitters is the place to go to participate for yourself. You see our question of the week this week. We said, we talk a lot about skew lately on our various shows and the value of it, or perhaps lack thereof, depending on your viewpoint. So we thought we'd put it to you. You guys feel that volatility skew is a good leading indicator for future price action in the underlying? That's what we're focusing on. Just how much of an effective of an indicator is it? Yes, I rely on it. No, I'm not really a fan of it. Or other, you prefer something else as a leading indicator, in which case we do ask you, hey, tell us what that is. We're curious. What else are you using out there? So participate in the great skew debate right now over there at Options. By the way, last week's poll, let's just pay it off really quickly. We asked you, why? Why did you start trading options? We gave you 4 choices: catching the meme stock wave, hedging your stock portfolio, higher portfolio leverage, or you graduated from futures. And higher portfolio leverage won with a little over half of the vote, 53.3%, followed by exactly 20% for graduated from futures. That one kind of took me by surprise. Put that in there as kind of a lark. I thought that would be the bottom of the list, but actually number 2. And then we had a tie for number 3 between hedging your portfolio and catching the meme stock wave, both of them with exactly 13.3%. So surprising results there. We had a lot of people chime in with different reasons. One guy said he didn't want to trade fixed income, so he ended up doing options. Other people had a bunch of different things. Obviously, post-pandemic, a lot of you wanted to dive into all the frenzy out there. This guy said he got into options because he tried to figure out how to generate yield in a low-rate environment. Yeah, that also is a popular use case. We didn't really put income generation, and I guess that could have been one of them. There are many things we could have put in there, but nonetheless, maybe that's why I graduated from futures got number 2. I don't know. Interesting stuff. Maybe we need to rejigger that poll and try it again down the road a little bit, because it's an intriguing question, and I'm not sure if we got to the crux of the answer with that. But we'll see. This week's poll, we'll see what you folks have up your sleeves. Meanwhile, though, let's go back around the block. Let's go back out to the land of the pit. Mr. Meatball, sir, a lot to watch this week. We got Tesla, we got Pinterest, we got earnings, we got vol. What's lighting up your tape, sir?
Tons of earnings. And yeah, I think it's going to be a very earnings heavy week. And because we don't just have tech, we also have a lot of big oil names going. You got Exxon, you got Chevron. So just a huge week for earnings is going to really, I think, set the tone for trading for the rest of the week. Facebook, notably tonight, I think could be really interesting.
And give us a quick glimpse. What's lighting up the Gamdar today, sir, this week?
You know what's lighting it up, interestingly, is a lot of the EV names are really hot today. A lot of strength in LCID that we talked about. Snap is real high, believe it or not, on the Gamdar. And I'm wondering whether we're going to see a bounce there this week sometime. If you look at all the volume, it looks like it wants to pop back over 55.
Does crazy amount of volume for a name a lot of people had kind of written off last week and thought might be the canary in the coal mine this week. Well, we shall see. We shall see as the earnings play out. Back out to Uncle Mike, sir. What are you keeping an eye on this week, in addition to doubling your allocations to Doge and Shiba Inu coin, sir?
You know what? I'm going to triple them just because you said so. So, yeah, definitely watching earnings and then watching to see if we can continue to make new all-time highs. The VIX coming down like it has. It's definitely piquing my interest in this market and being a bull. And then 10-year note is sold off over the course of the last month, and we're just kind of puttering around where we are right now, and interested to see if we continue to sell off with that or if we continue to stay relatively flat on it. So watching the 10-year note where it's at, as well as stocks and earnings. And with Mark, I'll be seeing what Facebook's doing a little bit later today.
All right, everybody. That music means we come to the end of the first leg of our many-legged options journey throughout the week, listeners. Don't worry, we got a lot more in store for you this week, including coming up a little bit after the show today. So if you're in the Secret Club, you're listening live, you get to have a nice live taste of the old Spikes father himself, Mr. Simon Hogue, joining us bright and early from across the pond for him. But now joining us, he's got a whole bunch of cool new crypto vol things, vol products to talk about, including crypto skew. He has kind of the crypto VIX. Now he's got crypto skew. So we're going to be talking about that on the Crypto Rundown in about exactly an hour, as well as all this craziness with the new Bitcoin ETF. It's live since last week. What's going on with it? What kind of drag are we really seeing out? All kinds of fun stuff. So we'll get into all of that in a little bit here on the Crypto Rundown. Of course, tomorrow we got JJ joining us. Friday, I do believe, actually, after the next episode of the Option Block, I think we're getting a double dose of the Spikes Father this week because he's joining us on Vol Views as well. So he's getting up early twice this week. So he's working hard for you folks out there, listeners. If you want to see the full schedule, at Options is the place to go. It should be pinned right up there to the top. Unless our polls are up there, then just scroll down a little bit. But it goes back and forth. We pin a lot of things throughout the week. Of course, you can sign up for our newsletter. You'll get the updated information of what we have on the network throughout the week as well. But let's go back around the horn. Let's go out to the land of the meatball first. Mr. Meatball, sir, if folks want to check out this Gamdar for themselves, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, just go to options.com. We're putting out amazing content on VIX trading every day. So if you're not subscribed to our newsletters, you are missing out on some amazing stuff. OptionPit.com.
There you go. OptionPit.com. Search for the keyword Gamdar. I guarantee you will find nothing, but then search for the Gamma Radar, and you'll find all sorts of good stuff. OptionPit.com. We're going to make him change his branding, whether he wants to or not. That's the power of the network here. Let's look at Uncle Mike. His business card now says Uncle Mike. Right, sir? If folks go to UncleMike.com, what will they find? Which you probably should buy after the show.
Not sure. No, do not know. So, but with that, if you would like to learn more about Uncle Mike from this show, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. And if you're looking for a financial advisor who likes the option product, feel free to visit my website and learn more about what I do and how you can get in contact with me, stcharleswealth.com.
Uncle Mike, I just looked it up. I don't think it's taken. You have to get on that, sir, before our listeners do. And then just redirect it to St. Charles. That's fine. Just buy it and do their old redirect. But you need to stake your claim to Uncle. It's giving me a 404. I'm not sure if that means someone has it and they're just camping on it or if it's untaken. But either way, Uncle Mike, get out there. Claim. So don't go to UncleMike.com, at least not yet, listeners. Go to stcharleswealth.com. And maybe someday in the future, I'll be able to say, go to UncleMike.com for all sorts of fun surprises out there. We got more surprises in store for you this week. So stay tuned, listeners. If you're listening after the fact, just hit next on your platform of choice. We'll be back there with the hot, fresh, and new options content waiting for you. And we're back again on Thursday for more of the Option Block. We'll see you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.